Hi, my name's Amir Hussain, and I'm the founder and CEO of Yeme Tech. I'm really delighted to present an interface of our community data platform, which showcases all of the things that are going on in a place and provides really unique insights into understanding community fulfillment. And this has been really powerful for people like architects or urban designers, councils, and others that have got an interest in uplifting communities. So I'll just share my screen and we'll get straight down to it. So this is our interface dashboard, and you can put any address in at this location here. We can then come up with the plan at this location, and we can choose a 5-minute radius, which gives us that, or a 15 or 20-minute or 30-minute radius. We can then choose whether we want to look at that through a walking profile or a cycling profile, or whether we want to even look at that through the lens of a vehicular travel distance, which will then allow us to quantify all of the data around the actual area that we've chosen. So if I go back to the walking zone, we can then start to look at things like the population density. And we can see that within this part of London, we've got 130,000 people. If I take this down to a 15-minute neighborhood, it's now gone down to 15,000 people. And I can begin to see where the density is greatest through the darker colors. We can also look at how the population has changed in this area. The brighter the green, the greater the population has increased, and where it's red, it's decreased. And we can then go through all of these parameters for the same location. So if I look at ethnicity, we can then get this granular understanding of the whole of this specific area. So it's not by a ward on LOSA or a land registry boundary, but by this walkable distance around this chosen site. So we can see that the predominant ethnicity is white British, but we can also see what the others are. We can then see how this has changed over the last 10, 12 years. And we can see how individually different ethnic groups have either increased or decreased. We can then compare this 15-minute area with the wider borough area, or compared to the rest of England. So we can start to do a comparative analysis of how this is working for each one of these ethnicities. I can then go into any specific race and start to identify those pockets. So we can see that if we look for the Chinese British, well, then that is the area where it's most prevalent. And if we look at, say, the Pakistani British, well, we can see these darker areas where they're most prevalent. We can do exactly the same thing then looking at this through the lens of faith, and we can see what the different types of faith groups we have within this area, and we can see how that's changed, and we can see how this area compares to the rest of the borough or city and the rest of the country. And we can see that across all of those faiths. And again, we can go through each one of those and identify which demographic is most prevalent in which areas. We then are able to look at things like qualifications and to really identify the nature of the makeup. So in this location, level 4 is people with degree levels and above, and that makes the predominant group. But we can see that what other groupings there are. And we can see how this has changed over the last 10 or 12 years. And we can also see what the level of high quality qualifications are and what the low qualifications are. And again, how does that compare for all the rest of the borough and the rest of the country? So if I was to look for people with no qualifications, well, I can see that these pockets are where people exist with no qualifications. And if we were looking at a development or regeneration plan here, it would be how we're going to connect into those groups to help uplift them that we'd be looking at. If we look at deprivation, well, now we can see how this particular area is performing, and we can see that the deprivation level is considered high, and it's actually become more deprived since 2015. And we can see the factors that are causing that high deprivation, and we start to see how this is comparing for each of those indices and how it compares to the rest of the borough. So that gives us an understanding of the baseline demographics within that chosen area. We can then identify how well served is this community by the assets and facilities around them. In other words, to what extent can we create a walkable neighborhood around our assets and around our site? So we go through the categorization of essential assets, lifestyle assets. These are things that you might need more than once a week. And then through the lens of diversity and inclusion assets to see how it works from the perspective of a more diverse community. So if we look at the essential assets, this is what we have in that basket of essentials. And we can then start to click on any one of these and see where they are. So we can see that ATMs are in that location, convenience stores are in those locations, and restaurants are in those locations. When we go to lifestyle list, this being London is pretty well served, but this is the basket of things that we think that most people may need more than once a week. So this gives us an idea of how far each one of these items are from our chosen location. And we can also look at this through the lens of a heat map as well. So when we then go to the diversity and inclusion list, well, this is the sort of things that we're identifying as being the items that will provide for that growing diverse community that we've highlighted exists in this area. But we can see that things are beyond the 15 minutes are then highlighted in red. So if we wanted to look at one of these things and see where they are, well, then we can see through that lens where those things are. So that gives us an overview of the walkable neighborhood proposition that this site offers. And we can then see that within those pockets of deprivation that we identified earlier, what facilities exist there. So we can begin to layer the different bits of data. When we then start to look at what activities are going on in an area, well, then we can start to understand the actual makeup of the place through the grassroots activities that different organizations are putting on. Now, in this location, which is in York, we have 1,342 activities taking place over a 2-month period. This is being hosted in 22 venues, which are located in these areas, by 27 different organizations. And we can go into an extraordinary amount of detail around who those organizations are and what each one of them is doing. We can start to see what is for families, what's for children, what's for adults. We can start to see what sort of category of activities there are, the most predominant being arts, and what the different types of activities that are being provided. We can then begin to see how many of these are free, and in this case, it's 31%. And we can start to see what category is most provided for. And we can start to see what's happening at different times of the day across in terms of activity provision. And we can also see which days of the week are most prevalent and which are least. So this provides an overview through 3 dimensions of how a place is working in relation to the people that live there, understanding pockets of deprivation, understanding people who are being excluded, and designing for future residents. It also allows us to understand what level of walkability the site has through the assets that are being provided, and crucially, we're highlighting what the gaps are. And then I think one of the most important factors is all the data related to the activities that are taking place within an area, because that indicates the level of mobilization and empowerment that people have within that community to create a really fulfilling place. So I hope you found that useful, and I really look forward to being able to demonstrate this more frequently. And if you have any questions, queries, or would like a demo, then please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.